Welcome back to Notorious Figures in History. Before Superman became a global franchise, before reboots, billion-dollar box offices, and cinematic universes, there was George Reeves. To millions of Americans in the 1950s, he wasn't playing Superman, he was Superman. And then, at just 45 years old, George Reeves was found dead in his bedroom in Benedict Canyon. But almost immediately, people who knew him, and people who didn't, asked the same question. What really happened to the first Superman? To understand why this story won't die, you have to understand the era. This was the studio system, the time when powerful executives could shape careers, bury scandals, and decide what the public was allowed to know. Hollywood had fixers, men whose job was keeping stars clean in the press and keeping problems out of courtrooms. One of the most famous names tied to that world is Eddie Mannix, an MGM executive long associated with studio damage control. And George Reeves wasn't just a TV star caught in fame. He was a man living close to that machine. On screen, Reeves projected calm authority, the kind kids trusted instantly. The irony is, he took that responsibility seriously. He was careful about the image, the example, the belief that children had in him. But while the show made him famous, it also boxed him in. In that era, television wasn't always respected by the film industry. And once audiences saw you as a single character, Hollywood could stop seeing you as an actor. So here's the uncomfortable tension. George Reeves was nationally adored and quietly trapped. Now add the personal side, the part that turns this from tragedy into mystery. Reeves had a relationship with Tony Mannix, who was married to Eddie Mannix. By many accounts, it was an open secret in Hollywood circles. Then in early 1959, Reeves left Tony and became engaged to Leonore Lemon, a socialite with a reputation in gossip columns. And here's a detail that makes the timeline feel like a movie. Reeves died on June 16, 1959, and some reporting notes their wedding was set for June 18th. 2 days before a wedding, at the height of public fame, right in the middle of complicated private relationships. That's not proof of anything, but it's the kind of detail that makes people ask, was someone panicking behind the scenes? On the night of his death, there were guests in the house. According to reports, Reeves, Lemon, and writer Robert Condon were present, and later 2 visitors arrived in the early morning hours. Then a gunshot. Reeves was found dead upstairs, and the official conclusion was suicide. But controversy grew because, depending on the source, there were inconsistencies people couldn't stop talking about. Conflicting accounts, questions around evidence handling, and lingering doubts among friends and observers. For example, major summaries of the case note reported issues like no fingerprints recovered from the gun and reported concerns around residue testing. And that leads to the questions that still pull people in. If he was alone, why were there so many changing stories? If it was straightforward, why does the case still feel foggy? Was George Reeves depressed and hiding it perfectly? Or was he caught in a moment of chaos, an argument, an accident, something that spiraled? And if you believe the darker possibilities, was Reeves simply too close to old Hollywood power dynamics to ever get a clean ending? Because in the studio era, the scariest idea isn't conspiracy. The scariest idea is control. Control over careers, control over reputations, control over what the public is allowed to believe. George Reeves never got to see Superman become immortal, but his version shaped what Superman meant: restraint, decency, strength without cruelty. And maybe that's the real tragedy. The man who played hope for a generation. Subscribe for more videos on Hollywood's dark history.